Welcome to Integrate This EdTech Podcast, the go-to digital space for educators and tech enthusiasts. I'm your host, David Berner, along with my co-host, Jeremy Mikla.
Last week, we gave you an overview of the fantastic features in the release of Magic Student, Magic School's student-facing AI program. Today, we want to give you a look into SchoolAI, an impressive teacher and student tool with built-in monitoring and controls for teachers. This will be a two-part series where we'll first explore what's available to teachers in part one, and in part two, we will cover the student side. So are you ready for school? Well, wake up, grab your backpack, and join us as we explore this all-in-one AI platform for your classroom.
As always, you can find more of our content on our Integrate This YouTube page. We love hearing about any tips you'd like to share with us and others, so please leave them in the comments below. And don't forget to connect with us by subscribing, liking our videos, and following Integrate This on X and Instagram. Okay, so once you are logged into SchoolAI, you're going to notice a pretty comprehensive dashboard here. Jeremy and I are going to take you through the different areas that you should get started with. And so don't be overwhelmed by, all that you see here. We're going to kind of look at one thing at a time. And we're going to start with the chat assistants and move into the tools. And then Jeremy will take us through spaces and kind of explain that whole feature and how that works. And so as we kind of move through this, everything should start to make more sense and come together. It can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes if you're looking at the dashboard and you're not really sure exactly where to start. And so we're going to give you some of the basics to get you moving in the right direction. So the very first thing that I wanted to cover is the assistants. And so I think the best way to think about these is that, with ChatGPT and Magic School and Brisk, which are all things that Jeremy and I have covered in past episodes, those things, when you're chatting with the chatbots that are in those systems, SchoolAI has their own, but one thing that's nice that they've done is they've kind of taken the chatbot concept and they've honed in on, particular like subset of prompts that you might go through as you interact with the different chatbots. So you can actually see on the right hand, there's this card where it says see all assistants. And if I click on that, you're going to get to start. There's 9 different chatbots, and those you can start any of those. And the idea here is that they're trying to get you to kind of focus in on one particular task. And so, there's things like field trip coordinator, Common Core expert, curriculum coach, AI and education coach. Any of these are fine to start with, and they'll ask you different questions when you go into them. But if you have the very first card is where I'm going to go into just to show a little bit about what this looks like. And this one's called the co-teacher. So when we go into that, you're going to get your normal, kind of what we have always seen with these conversations that you have with the chatbot. And you can write in your message here. So if you have something particular like that you would like to have them have the chatbot start with, you could certainly put in a custom prompt. But you can also choose one of these cards, which should be geared more towards that specific chatbot or assistant, they call it. So, and we're going to do the help me plan my day. You can see here, I did one prior, and this allows me to either see the previous one or I can start a new one. So let's say for this, I want to do help me plan my day. Okay. And so it starts by kind of giving a little introduction and then asking me for the step-by-step process. And so it says, could you provide me with a rough list of tasks or commitments you have today? How many hours are you planning to work? And some just basic stuff to get started. So one thing I could do is I could say, I need a lesson plan for today on Minnesota State Social Studies Standard. (9.4.1.1). We'll try that. Okay. So designing a lesson plan. So it kind of walks you through what you could do to start planning your day. Now, this is going to be pretty general, and it's giving you some pointers on what to do to get that process started. What I could do after this is ask it this question here, and actually it looks like it's still thinking. There we go. Okay, so could you design the pacing and assessment for this lesson? Okay, so it's going to start to now use what I gave it previously of that 9.4.1.1 standard and put it in, and then it's now focusing more on the lesson plan that I would like. So what you're going to find too is that when Jeremy and I go through some of the different tools, you will notice a lesson plan tool on there as well. And that's something you could just start right from the tools dashboard if you would like. But this at least gives you some insight into having like the co-teacher chatbot and what you can do to, have it start to help you with your day. My previous one that I had was I did something somewhat similar, and I did a science standard, and it is pretty consistent, I would say, where it gives you some pointers first on how, because I think it really kind of assumes in this prompt anyway, where I'm asking it to help me plan my day, it's kind of taking more of a backseat approach and giving you pointers as to how you could get that process rolling for yourself. But then if you're requesting of it something particular, then it'll produce that for you. Um, in this case, what I actually did was I put in a science standard, and it gave me that same thing that you just saw that was developed. And then one thing I did was I actually put in, sorry, I meant social studies standard, not science. And then it corrected, and it found the right standard and then produced that for me. Okay. And I should mention too that I actually did, when I had it produce this standard, it at first it found, so I gave it the standard number, but what happened was it didn't have the right standard language or the substrand correct. And so if I go down a little bit further, after it gave me this initial information here, I noticed that, and then I said, I think you did the wrong, the strand is history, substrand is historical thinking skills. So I did have to actually correct it on what it produced, and then it gave me the correct substrand. And then from there, I did the lesson. So I think one thing that I could point out with that is to just be careful about looking over what it produces for you. And I know Jeremy and I have said this over and over again. And I think that's just kind of the going rate with these AI systems, is to be cognizant that it's not always going to produce what you want. It's trying, it's pulling the information, and then I just had to correct it, and then it produced the thing that I wanted.
I think always a good reminder, you are always the expert of your classroom, the students, the content, and everything else. So, use it as a guide, but always double check its work, just like you should be doing of all sorts of things.
Yep, yep, definitely. So I just want to take a step back. Again, you could start with any of these cards, and if you want to do some curriculum coach stuff, you could have it geared more towards that, and that's fine. So I don't know, how these will progress and at this time, and how more in depth or more focused they'll become. With like ChatGPT, we were seeing people create GPTs for certain tasks, and so everything is tailored to that. And so I think as we move on, these will get better and better, and then you'll have much more focused time on a particular task, and they may add cards in here. We'll just have to kind of see how that progresses. The second thing we want to get into, and you can do it from the top menu here, but if you're on the regular SchoolAI site, on the homepage, you can go to the tools card, which is just above assistants, and you're going to see they have a couple quick link tools here. So lesson plan, like I had mentioned, and then if you click see all tools, that's going to bring you to the same spot as the tools tab up here. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in here. I know Jeremy's going to go over some different ones. What I wanted to do first was look at rubrics and then show you something that I found really fascinating with the course outline part. So if I go to rubric and I click generate, I can actually have where so I just filled this out, and I have a couple that I've used in the past for our brisk tutorial where we used the honors chem lab, so the directions, and we had a rubric and then a student example. So for this, I want to produce a rubric. We wanted to see how things kind of compare. So let's say that we want to do 10th grade, and we're going to do lab overview assignment. Okay, and then we're going to do a 4-point scale. Okay, and we will just do, let's see, we're going to try it just like this here and see what we get. So we'll do generate. And there it produces our rubric for us. So, and one thing you could try is if you have some criteria in mind, like if I had formatting, purpose, procedure, data, conclusion, maybe what I would like to do is put that into my rubric request. So if I go to my rubrics here, we can click generate and we could do the same one and do and then include criteria, and then we could grab our formatting, purpose, procedure. We'll go formatting, purpose, procedure, data analysis. Okay, and then we'll get our formatting criteria followed by purpose and so on. So it'll fill those out. I like what SchoolAI does with the ability to what I've noticed is that when you produce things, when we had like a brisk teaching AI, I thought it was great that it pulls things in and creates them kind of in Google format with Google Docs or Google Slides and those type of things. But I also found that I like the way that SchoolAI has kind of their own built-in system that is somewhat reminiscent of like Word or Google Docs, and it puts it in here. And then you can edit in this. So, right away you can change things if you want to. There's the ability to export it. So if you want to pull it into a PDF, you can. You can share it to others. So if you click the share button, and this might be something that Jeremy covers as well, but there's just a bunch of things you can do in here with the editing process. And if I want to change things, change the text, maybe my criteria was wrong for one of these, I could do that. Or I can even, if you highlight text, you'll notice that the AI tools piece becomes available too. And from there, you have a whole bunch of different changes that you can make with the AI tools. Probably one of the best ones being translate, being able to make things shorter or longer, all of the above. So it's all really good. And so that's an example of the rubric. The next one I want to do here is we're going to look at go back, and we're going to look at course outline. So I like this one a lot. And you can start by generating a course outline. And I started to think about like, okay, so what if I have a world history course, for example, and I don't have any idea where to start or what these things should look like in terms of lessons. So the course outline, just like everything else, you start by filling it out. And so you're going to do your world history, social studies, and then you're going to do grade level, ninth grade. And then so basically what I did was I just counted how many standards there were. And this wouldn't really be the case because you're going to have, maybe several lessons per standard or, benchmark. So this is just kind of, just to show you what it looks like. But world history, social studies, ninth grade, 43 lessons. And then I can go and I can pick Minnesota for this. We're going to do in-person classroom setup. And then the teaching style, which is interesting as well, you can do lecture-based or project-based. I'm going to do project-based. I find that much more enjoyable than lecture. And then, so here's where I tested this yesterday, and I thought this was really cool about how I can say, I need to cover the Minnesota state standards for world history. Use these standards and benchmark codes to create the course outline. Okay, and then I'm just going to go over to our script here, and then I'm going to pull in these standard codes and plug them into the space for what my course needs to cover. And then we're going to try this out. We're going to see what we actually get with the course outline. Okay, so what you're going to notice is there's this distinction between when you create a course outline versus like a unit or a lesson plan. The unit or lesson plan you'll give it the standard or you'll give it the prompt and it will produce that lesson for you. The course outline, what I like about it is that it used the Minnesota State standards, and I checked these when I did my first one, and this all looks the same. It's breaking down into these 43 lessons, the world history content. So starting with like ancient civilizations and then all the way up to present day time, globalization, modern issues. So what's great is it has that in there. It also includes some review and exam prep in here, and then the standards integration. So where did it pull these from? Now, this is just an outline. So this is great. And then what you can do is, let's say I want to start with Mesopotamia. I need to start with that. That's going to be my beginning of the year. And I'm going to click generate. And what that's going to do is pull in that information. So Mesopotamia, ninth grade, introduction to the cradle of civilization. So it's taking what it knows about that standard when it created outline and pulling it into where I click generate. So I click generate. and then it produces that lesson plan for me. Okay, so it's putting in my learning objectives, materials needed, and then instructional procedures. Okay, so it's going through, got my introduction, direct instruction, guided practice, independent practice, and closure, assessment, extension activities, resources that were used, standards alignment. And this is all really great. I mean, it's basically pulling in everything that I need for delivering this Mesopotamia lesson. Basically, what I can do is I can export it, I can share it, or if I feel good about this, this will get stored in my lesson plan section here. So they'll start to get funneled into this area. But what I like even more is from here, I can then click where it says World History, and that's going to bring me right back to my course outline. And then I can go in and say, okay, I need my next lesson, which is on ancient Egypt. And what you'll notice here is that I generated that lesson from my outline for Mesopotamia, and now it's, instead of part of my outline, it's now a lesson plan built. So what'll happen is, as I create and generate lessons, it's building out the course outline with the lesson plans in it. So when let's say I do all of these and this gets funneled back up to the top, I can click on that and it's going to bring me back to my lesson plan. So it's not that you're just, you have the course outline and then you have to like print it off to refer back to it. You can actually generate all of your lessons, right? Just like we did with the first one. We'll generate this one on ancient Egypt. And then what we want to do each time is go back to the world history page, and it's going to continue to put them into this section. We'll actually have to see if we go back into that lesson. Once it's produced for us, we can check and see how this falls within our lesson plan outline. But let's say for this, it looks like now that it has produced more, it does put it just below. So if you do it in order here, like if you click generate, it should just continue to put them here and rotate them around. But even if it doesn't, I can always say, oh, okay, maybe I need to do Mesopotamia second. Well, I just move that down. I can just drag it. And so this would be the process for developing your entire outline, and then keep in mind too, generating the exams and things that would go along with that as well. So that gives you some, I think one of the coolest things to do on SchoolAI is the outline. Especially if you're a new teacher getting started and you want to have a place to start, and this is going to generate lessons for you, and you're going to feel much more at ease, I feel like, and getting started with your class. And this is just a social studies example. Feel free to use, for whatever class or content area you have, you're going to find this useful.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And remember, we were talking about the other day how, you can use it to create kind of that branching out and that networking, and everything just kind of builds off of each little part. And this outline makes it do that pretty simply. That's a really, really cool feature. All right, so we're going to take a look at some of the other tools that are available within School AI that I think are pretty great as well. In particular, I wanted to look at some of the tools that in other platforms were under their paid wall. But here with School AI, these are tools that are going to be accessible to teachers to be able to use without having to pay for them. And those are the ones that I think have more of like a special ed focus to them. You're going to see that around here. And in particular, I'm going to start here with this the BIP, or the behavior intervention plan. And just like David had gone into these tools, and when you were ready to start one, to click the generate button, the other thing that I thought was kind of nice here that SchoolAI does is it also shows you that you have other items or documents that you've already generated within that particular tool. So I have one that I have already generated, but I'm just going to start over here with a new one. So I'm going to go and click the generate button. And first I start off by picking a grade level of a student. So I'm just going to say a fourth grade student. This person has difficulty keeping their hands to themselves. They often want to touch other students without asking first. And maybe we say that they do also have some difficulty remaining seated. I'm sure no teacher has ever seen any of these behaviors from their kids before. So let's see what it generates here for us. And like David had said, it is its own document format that they have. It's similar enough to whether Microsoft Word or a Google Doc that you're able to recognize the different tools and things that are available to you. And as this is kind of printing it out, you can see that it begins with a goal in mind. And it talks about then the strategies that a teacher might incorporate in helping to get the student to recognize when these behaviors are happening themselves, and then offering some sort of strategy to help the student achieve a goal related to correcting those different behaviors, whether they be about teaching new skills, maybe offering a change in environment. Here's some reinforcement strategies, whether it's praise or a reward system, and ways to monitor and evaluate it. And even it talks about how to kind of keep collaboration paths open with parents. So a nice little thing here that you're able to do with that through that behavior intervention plan. So I'm going to go back. That's just one tool. And again, this would be a tool that would probably be under a paid wall in some of the other AI platforms for educators that we've looked at. And I'm going to go back to the tools here where I was. The next one here, you can also use it to generate an IEP or to use something to help generate some different goals. So I'm actually going to this time, because I had started a document, I'm going to open up the document here that I have under IEP goals, and it's very similar to when David was laying out the lesson plans, and the different items that showed up in those lesson plans all get saved within that area. And I'm going to open up this one here that I had started the other day. And I talked about a student who had there are 3 grade levels behind in reading, a couple of grade levels behind in math. And you're going to see then that it starts to develop these IEP goals for that particular student, focusing on reading comprehension and fluency and vocabulary. Now, these might be goals that, you think are maybe not exactly what you would like to do. So as David was showing, maybe you don't want to use text-to-speech software. So you can just delete that part out and it saves it for you in the way that you want it. But you could see that it also asks when you were prompted to do this. I had to enter in some areas that I also perceived to be the student's strengths. So not only did I think this was neat because it's trying to help to make up for a deficit in some of their goals, but it's also giving them goals that are also based on what some of their strengths are. And when we think about, sometimes we need to compensate for our weaknesses and take advantage of our strengths. So this gives then, I think, the opportunity to kind of keep that sort of a mindset and focus that students should be taking advantage of their strengths and not just spend all of your time necessarily making up for the things that they're not doing well, because that just kind of leads a student then to feel like they are a failure, that they're never going to be able to succeed in your particular class. So that's kind of a neat little tool that they have built right in here to School AI as well. That again is one of these that's available for free. And then there's also this IEP one, where you can then, in addition to entering in the grade, enter in, has this student been labeled with a particular label? Are they ADHD perhaps? Are they on the autism spectrum? And you can enter in your different things here and click generate as well. Again, just like I've cautioned before, and I know that you know better than this, be careful entering in any sort of personal identifiable information in that PII, because that's really, I think, within this program, the one place where you could really, things could go bad for you. So those are a couple of the tools that I think are really strong in here. One other one to point out that I thought was kind of neat here too, you can create story word problems for just about any subject or topic. I was thinking especially math and science. And if you're struggling with some of those word problems to come up that are maybe a little bit more reality based, it's a great place to go. The other area to show you here then within the tools is it not only does it sort them into the different documents you've created within each tool up here, it also shows you your recent ones that you've created and recent ones that you've used. But it also gives you the ability to recommend to SchoolAI a tool that you might think is helpful. And then to request that from them. And who knows, that could be something that they put in a future update that they make to their site. The final part that we're going to share with you here today is with School AI Spaces. And I think this is going to be one of these areas that you're really going to see a lot of interactive things with AI that'll begin to take place, not just between you and the AI, but also between AI and your students. And that is through these spaces that are within SchoolAI. So I'm actually going to start out under the Discover area, because Discover is going to have these different spaces where you are going to be able to share to your students. It asks you if you would like to, you could start by finding a space that they think is going to align to what you're trying to do, whether that's based upon a standard, whether that's based upon a student's grade level, subject area that you're teaching, or a particular strand. But they also have some in here that are just ability to use on a day-by-day basis with your students. We're going to talk about Sidekick in part 2, so where we talk about the student-facing side of SchoolAI. So I'm going to skip over that part for now. But you can use it to help you generate a bell ringer or an exit ticket. They often will show featured collections, like to this month that we're recording this happens to be in March, so it's Women's History Month. So there'll be some spaces there that you can use to establish with your students. They have some history ones, some test prep ones, for example. They have ones that other teachers have created and put out there. So let's dive into one of these so you can actually see what it is going to do. I'm going to pick the Women's History Month area, and it's going to have some featured ones here within this particular area. Like, for example, Sally Ride. I can choose to open up that space, and it's going to tell me a little bit about what that space is like, and what the student and the teacher would be able to do with it. And this one looks like it's an interactive space where you get to both learn about Sally Ride and also kind of have some interaction with that person as well. So this would be something I can preview it here as a teacher, and then when I'm ready to use it with students, which we'll talk about in part 2, I'm going to launch that particular thing. Okay. In addition to these Discover ones, once you use one of them, if I go then into the Spaces tab up here on the top, it keeps track of the spaces that I have used most recently with my students or with my classes. And so if I wanted to redo one of those, you could see that they show up here as well. Not only do they show up here in my list of recent things, it also tells me what the status of that particular thing is. Because SchoolAI is going to allow you to share these particular spaces with your students, and so that your students can interact with them. If I am done with a particular one, I can choose to go over here and I can either end that particular space or I can delete it. So for this one, if I just want to end it, it will then change from being active to ended. And it might have to refresh the page for it to actually show up that way. But it will, because you can see I've ended a couple of other ones. Okay. What's also that you can also do as you start to fill up many of these different ones, you can start to filter them based upon what their status happens to be. Okay, the next thing here that I want us to take a look at is under the spaces category here, or it is to create a space yourself that you want students to be able to interact with. So we're actually going to go through the step of being able to do that. So I'm going to go to the create part, and you're going to see I only have one creation so far. And we can look at that a little bit from the student-facing side in part 2. But I want to create a brand new one that we're also going to use in part 2 as well. And that is going to be to create, excuse me, we're going to create a new space that we will use with our students. Think of the space as kind of like being the classroom. And we are going to, I'm just going to copy some text that I've already written so I don't have to redo it all. We're going to create a choose your own adventure style space where kids get to kind of create their own journey throughout an era of history. So I'm going to call it the Choose Your Historical Adventure. And I came up with a prompt here that I want the AI to be able to follow to help direct a student through this particular experience. And it is going to be that the AI is going to be the historical adventure guide. They're going to create an engaging, educational, historically accurate experience that's tailored to the student's choice of historical era. They'll generate interactive stories that suit the understanding. I'm gearing this towards middle school students, so I'm kind of helping to set that range for them. It will consist of several different but connective segments, will then take place in that historically accurate setting with real historical figures and allow the students to make choices. Upon concluding the adventure, then the AI is going to pose sorts of questions that will help to pull out a student's knowledge of that time period. It was a really neat kind of thing. Then it asks for some other additional details that are optional, like a cover image or giving some of title or describing for teachers what this chatbot will do, or describing for students what the chatbot will do. Or if you don't want to enter in that info yourself, you could click on the Generate All Fields button and give it a moment, and it's going to generate first an image that it will use that you can more quickly recognize it with. It'll give it some sort of a subtitle as well as that description. So there we go. Now that it's created, if I were ready to send it out to students, I'd hit save and launch. I could just hit save, or if I want to test out to see is this something I would actually use, I could click the start preview and it says, hey, great, let's dive into the past. What era would you like to explore? So at this point, I'm just going to save this because we're going to pick this up in part 2, and we're going to see exactly what, from a student perspective side, this would look like. All right, thank you for tuning in to the Integrate This podcast. We hope you picked up some valuable insights that will allow you to help explore how to use the SchoolAI platform for teachers. Be sure to check the show description for links to helpful resources, including where to get started with SchoolAI. Special thanks to co-host David Berner, and of course to you, all of our viewers, for joining us in this digital exploration. My name is Jeremy Mikla. Until next time, keep integrating, innovating, and shaping the future of education. Happy teaching.
And don't forget to subscribe to our Integrate This YouTube channel and follow us on X, and Instagram for the latest tutorials and discussions in EdTech. Next week, we're going to continue our School AI series and focus on the student side in part 2. See you next time.
David and I will be at the TIE Conference in South Dakota, April 15th through 16th. If you're there, please be sure to look for us in our Integrate This t-shirts. If you have other events or presentations you would like us to do, please reach out to us on our socials. You can find those links in the show description as well.